Hi guys, welcome to Church Talk. We had about 4 weeks of just not recording because we had all these recordings pre-recorded, and in English, I think we've got like 3 months of no English podcast or 2 months. So the English is back. We're back in Texas. Here we are. So today we have Mark and Michelle Moore from, did I say Texas or Turkey or
Yeah.
Texas and Turkey.
Texas and Turkey? Okay, so how are y'all doing today on this Wednesday morning?
We're good, Ethan.
We're good.
We're good. Yep.
Well, that's awesome. So let's just jump right into it. We are in, just a disclaimer, we're in the youth room. I eventually want to make the youth room into like a half studio, half whatever. This is obviously not how it's going to turn out. I think it turned out okay, but we will be getting a higher quality pretty soon. So yeah, so if you're watching and you're like, what are they doing? Okay, so let's just jump right into it. How did y'all meet each other? Or actually, you know what? No, let's start one by one. So, Mark, are you from Dallas?
I'm actually
or
from West Texas.
West Texas.
From Midland. That's where I was born and raised.
I try to go there as little as humanly possible.
Me too.
Okay, cool. So you were born and raised there? Were you
Born and raised there.
Christian?
Left about college time and went to Odessa. Ooh, a long way away. 15 minutes down the road.
I was like, it's like an hour?
No, not even that long. And then I ended up in Denton at UNT, and then 4 years in Youth with a Mission in Tyler, Texas. Met Michelle during that time, got married, moved to Lubbock, back to West Texas, finished up my college education at Texas Tech. So
All right, then.
that's me.
That's Mark. All right, right to the point. And Michelle?
Yeah, I was born in the U.S., but we moved around a lot till I was 8, and then we moved to Europe, to Germany. So all of my childhood was in Germany. Graduated high school, came back to go to college in Arkansas. The Lord told me to move to Texas, which is not where I wanted to be.
I mean, it's
But-
better than Arkansas.
Well, we can talk about that on a different podcast. But anyway, he needed somebody to rescue Mark. So he sent me to Midland, Texas, so I could rescue him. So yeah,
Rescue
and
him
then
from all those windmills. And
yeah,
So-
from
All those oil derricks.
yeah. So then when he finished university, we had just had our first son and moved out here to Dallas Fort Worth, and after 6 years here, moved to the Middle East.
All right. So when y'all met, did you each have? Well, I mean, y'all were both Christians already, right? Were y'all just Christians from the get-go, or just kind of?
And Mark's family was. Mark was raised in church from the time he was about 5. And then for my family, I have really strong impressions of church as a small child. But once we went to Europe, we got away from church. It was, we just had the choice of a Catholic church or a Protestant church, but not necessarily a Spirit-filled church. And it was just really easy to slide away.
What did y'all go to Europe for?
My dad was a civil servant working alongside the military. So we were there. My family was there 10 years, but I had already come back to the States for university.
Cool. So did y'all each have, like when y'all met, had you each had already your callings? Kind of felt like you already knew what you were going to be doing for the rest of your life, or?
Yeah, actually, on our second date, Mark said, "I'm going to Turkey. If you can do that, I'd really like to see you again."
I can literally hear Mark saying that.
Yeah, it was really hard for him. It was.
So
It was
I'm
hard
going
for him.
to Turkey if you'd like to join me.
Yeah, and I felt a strong call to missions. I thought it was Africa, but at that point, we were in our mid-20s. I was willing to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Make that sound like you're desperate.
No, just ready to get going.
So y'all met and then each had a calling for missions. Mark already
Yeah.
knew Turkey.
Yeah.
Did you know Turkey from the get-go, or you just?
Yeah.
Had you gone and it just touched your heart, or?
Yeah. In my first year at Youth with a Mission, towards the end of the first year at Youth with a Mission, I led a team to Turkey in northern Iraq, and so it was in that month that we were in that part of the world that the Lord spoke to me and said, "I'm going to have you come back here one day." I hadn't met Michelle at the time. I met her about a year later. and briefly, and then we went our separate ways, and then we kind of met each other again a little bit later and started dating. But we had been riding back and forth prior to dating for a few months. And
So what's writing back and forth for y'all?
yeah, that's
Right?
For me, it's
actually
like-
actually
pull my phone out real
writing.
quick and
Email.
just-
It was like
Actually-
actual letters.
That's right.
well, yeah, an email. Even then, I'm like, y'all are emailing each other.
No, we didn't.
No, this was actual pen and paper.
I don't even know if I had an email address at that point when
No,
we met.
didn't. We
College has made me have to get back into emails, but
Yeah.
I can't stand emails.
Yeah, see, I mean,
Like, y'all
now
email
it's
me, I'm
just
like, you
all
can't just,
it's
you know,
all
text me or
WhatsApp or yeah, Messenger or whatever. But yeah,
Even
no,
then,
we
it's pulling teeth getting youth here or my friends or whatever to use WhatsApp. I'm like, what are you doing on WhatsApp? Oh, yeah, it's because literally everywhere else in the world they use WhatsApp. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and Telegram now.
Yeah, and Telegram. Yeah,
Telegram.
yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
Like when I go to Latin America, they see they're like, oh, what platform is that? I'm like, text message. Like, like, you use that? I'm like, oh, that's so weird. Like, no, using WhatsApp is weird. Anyway, so y'all met. Mark already had the calling on Turkey.
Yep.
So how did y'all kind of like sync your plans? Did you just like, how long did it take to get engaged and married? And
We were from the time we started dating to the time we were married was 13 months. So
okay.
we were both in our
Mid-20s.
mid to late 20s, and we'd already been through the whole dating scene, and we're both fed up with it completely. And so when we started dating, it really was
It's just like, all right.
we're done, and we're not going to play these games anymore. And that's why on our second date, I just told Michelle, I said, you know, I'm called to Turkey, because I just didn't want this to extend out another however long, and then she say, oh, I'm not doing the whole Turkey thing, and then have to start all over again. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because then you'd have to waste all that time and
yeah, that's right,
man.
So
Yeah, and I don't know about y'all, but for me, I hate wasting time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is or how long it is. But if I find out that it was for nothing, oh man,
yeah,
no, it's like
That's no
mental
fun.
damage. Anyways, so y'all met, and then how long did it? I actually know Clark. So how long did it take for y'all to get Clark going? After 13 months, then it was it.
yeah.
Like a couple
we
years
we were
down, or-
married. Clark came at about the 2.5 year mark.
Okay.
So
And so then was it 6 years after Clark that y'all went to Turkey? Or?
Yep. We went to Turkey. He was born in '98. We were in Turkey in 2004. So he was 6 when we moved there.
So what were y'all doing for those 6 years or so?
We were here in Dallas. We moved to Dallas right after he was born. So he was not even 2 months old when we
So
moved
Clark
here.
is from West Texas.
He was born in Lubbock. That's right. Originally, he's from West Texas, but
I have very
he has
fortunately-
spent almost no time there.
I've been to West Texas probably twice.
Yeah, a
Or
lot of
maybe
people.
maybe 3 times.
Yeah, yeah.
And my memories are
Most
not
people
very-
say, "Yeah, we've been through there."
Yeah. yeah.
Great
Yeah,
people.
went through there on the way to Colorado
Yeah.
at like, you know,
It
2 a.m.
really, I mean, West Texas. If you want to raise your kids in just a great environment of just, I mean, really,
Good
just
people.
good people, conservative values. You know, there's not a better place. But if you're looking for anything other than the desert, that's probably not where you
Yeah.
want to be.
No, because it gets cold there, it gets hot there.
It gets cold
Oh,
and it
man,
gets
no.
hot. That's
I
right.
can't. The furthest
Nothing
west
in
that I've
between.
been that I can remember is like Abilene.
Yeah.
Abilene's pretty
Abilene and-
compared to the rest of West Texas, so that's
I don't want
kind
to
of
see the rest of it then. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm
I
good.
don't miss the sandstorms and the wall
Yeah.
of dirt in the spring.
So how did y'all, you know, you're getting life going and stuff. How did you kind of merge your callings, or you already had the same calling in the first place?
Well, we, like Michelle said, we both had a real strong call in our heart for missions before we started dating. That's really God
So when
had
you
moved
say
us in
missions,
that
is it like you know painting houses and giving out food, or is it more like you know evangelizing or what?
Yeah.
'Cause
Well, you
missions
know-
is pretty broad. And,
Well, it's become really broad,
Sure.
you know, but you know the mandate's always been the same,
sure.
which is preach that the kingdom of heaven is near, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, freely you've given, freely receive,
Amen.
freely give, and go into all the world and make disciples. I mean, that's the mandate, and so that's always been on our heart is to make disciples. whether that's painting houses or whether that's planting churches, as long as the mandate's being fulfilled, which is to make disciples, that's what we knew we were called to.
Sure.
So
So, what made the decision? Okay, we're going to Turkey. I mean, you already knew you
I
were
did.
going, but so
I
you
made
did.
the decision.
But like, what was the opportunity? Was there an opportunity, or was it just kind of like watching House Hunters International, and
Right.
and they were in Istanbul, and it was like, oh
There
wow,
was no House Hunters International in 04, Ethan.
oh there wasn't an 04?
No.
I just remember from when I was a kid, my mom was
Yeah.
watching House Hunters.
No, we just got to a point that we had been doing the whole 2 years. Okay, in 2 years we're gonna go. In 2 years we're gonna go, and then we would have a baby, have another baby, buy a house, and 2 years and 2 years.
Y'all have more than just Clark.
Yeah, we have 4. We have 4 kids. So Allie was born. Clark was in '98. Allie in 2000. We were here in Dallas, Fort Worth. Mark had a secular job, but we were also serving at church, and in a lot of areas. We were serving in outreach, and we were life group leaders, and I worked in children's ministry every weekend, and just whatever we could find to be connected and to build the kingdom, together in a healthy way. And so then we just really felt like the Lord was saying, okay, take a trip, just get out there. And so we went to a conference
in 2001.
in 2001, a month after the towers came down after 9/11, which was a miracle. In literally 4 weeks, our kids were taken care of, our finances were fully covered, and we were on a plane. And then
Going to the Middle East.
Going to the Middle
after
East.
9/11.
Yeah. And so then over the next year and a half,
So that
we
really
went
worked
4
out.
times. Yeah. There were a few people that had a few questions about, like, really? Are you sure that's the
You're
Lord?
going to Turkey?
Really? Do you know where that is?
And y'all didn't. Well, later we'll get into it, but y'all didn't just stick to Turkey. Y'all also kind of branched out too.
We are now. Yeah.
But I interrupted. So
yeah.
So y'all right shortly after 9/11, was it like So y'all took a trip.
We took a trip. We did a little scouting trip.
We were there for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks in October. We went again in April and did another 2 weeks. Went to a couple of different places. Went again in October. Then we went with your dad in the spring of 03, I think it was.
Yeah.
And actually, your dad had a prophetic word for us on that trip that it was time to make the move.
He said within 6 months you'll be in Turkey.
And he wasn't. I mean, it wasn't quite. It was a little more than 6 months, but he was right on.
It was less than 6 months.
We were so.
Oh no, it was a little more. Yeah.
We were so stirred. It was just like, okay, we gotta.
Every now and then, my dad pulls one of those out. And
Well, we
hate it because we know he's right. So
Well,
it's just like,
you're raised in church, so you hear the illustration all the time about how the eagle will unfeather the nest. And really, that's what God did here. He really unfeathered it. We were so dissatisfied with being here. We felt so...
every day getting on 35. It was just
Yeah,
like, oh, man.
it was just like, we love the
That's
people
literally what I was
here.
doing because that's where my
but-
job was downtown
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I thought Denton. Okay, probably on 35.
But we were
We were in Little Elm.
But
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were in Little Elm.
So I had to come down 35 to.
I say the 35 thing because we actually did a missions podcast the other day, but it wasn't really like missions work. It was more like following what God's telling you to do.
Yeah.
And part of it was I was interviewing somebody who was in Spanish, and they were telling me about how they moved from Cancun to Mexico City, and I was like, man, just from day one, hitting the traffic's right there, it hits you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we say 35, but if you don't
Yeah.
want to be here,
Right.
that traffic is like the first thing you
It's
do in the
killer.
morning. It's the
Yeah.
last thing you do in the day.
Yeah.
It's
Yep. Well, and that's what happened for us again after 3.5 years. By 3 years in Istanbul, man, we knew the Lord was getting ready to move us into something else and in a different direction. And we just got to where this city that we loved, that was so vibrant and so full of culture, became just this prison. Like, we just needed to get out. And it was God just unfeathering the nest.
Yeah.
Getting us ready to, if he doesn't do that, we'll often stay in a place too long. And when he's talking to
comfortable.
us. So,
Very comfortable.
And we moved, we
So-
moved further south and started a church and, had more kids. And then when the refugee crisis hit the Middle East 6 years, almost 7 years ago now, we started doing that as well, working with refugees. It became my primary focus in ministry was working with refugees.
Well, because I remember Allie would tell me, she's like, yeah, I'm in Iraq or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you're not. She's like, yeah, I am.
No, we were.
And I was just like, why? She's like, yeah,
No, that was
we're
one
out
of those
here.
things we didn't
She
tell people.
sent me like a selfie, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, we intentionally did not tell people that I took her and Clark to Iraq the year Clark graduated high school. She turned 17 or 16 maybe. And we knew that it would really scare people. But
That's what you want.
we had a piece about it. So it was easier to talk about it afterwards with people
Yeah.
when they knew that we were safe, that we were back.
Well, it's kind of
that-
like the asking for forgiveness instead of permission.
Yeah,
Right.
sorta.
It's kind of like.
Except, we didn't ask for
Yes, sir.
forgiveness.
Oh,
We're just
sure,
like,
sure,
it's okay.
sure.
You'll get used to it.
Sure.
It'll wear on you.
Well, I tell people, and they think I'm joking, but I want to go just at one trip, just knock it all out. I want to go to Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, just go in a circle, just
Come on.
like just knock them all out.
Yep.
And then come home. I think that's an experience that a human being needs
Yeah.
Yeah.
right there, for good and for bad. You know?
I'm counting the days.
Yeah, I'll go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
I'm
no, I
just
tell
waiting for the
people,
Lord to
I tell
open
people they're
those
like,
doors.
you're crazy. I'm like, and they're like, you're gonna die, you know whatever. I'm like, well, that's kind of why I want to go. Other people have to live there, and I can't go check it out. You know,
Right.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like, but I'm serious. It's like I want to go to all of them: Iraq, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, just in a trip.
Yeah.
I've already knocked out the Israel and the Jordan, and the Palestinian territories. So I'm probably not going to the Gaza anytime soon, but I think I'd rather go to Iraq, Iran, and Syria and all that than I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
Gaza. But
It is hard, again, for Americans to get into Iran, but the other places, totally doable.
well, we'll talk about that after the podcast, and then we'll record there with like this really
There
cool
you go.
backdrop of
Come
you know,
on.
the desert. And we'll just say
Sounds like
we'll just
plan.
say we're in
Let's
West
do it.
Texas. And
Yeah.
we'll just call it a day with that.
West Texas.
Yeah. We're out here in Midland. Here in Midland. Oh, that license plate? No, it's
Don't worry
fine.
about it.
It's
Don't worry
fine.
about it.
Anyway, but no, seriously, I've seen movies about with terrorists and stuff, and the movies that Hollywood makes. I'm like, man, I want to go over there.
Yeah.
It does not
Yeah.
scare me whatsoever. But
No, and
anyway,
it shouldn't.
Yeah.
no,
It shouldn't. 98% of the people in that part of the world will open their homes and their doors and feed you their last
Very warm people.
amount of food. It's
Yeah.
it's the 1 or 2% that gives the rest.
Well,
such
that's exactly right.
Bad reputation.
exactly right. Yeah, the 1 or 2% sticks out.
Right.
It's like if there's a plane crash,
Right.
where are you gonna stop? You're 1 out of 250,000 that you're gonna die
Yeah.
in a plane
Right,
crash or
exactly.
crash in a plane crash. Not even or crash. Not die. Die is like even more unlikely.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to convince my family I want to go skydiving, and it turns out a couple of my cousins also want to go skydiving, and we were telling my uncle about it, and he's like, "Yeah, well, a couple people died in Dallas the other day skydiving." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Their parachutes got tangled." I was like, "Well, I'd like to read that story," and I believe him. I believe him, but it's kind of like, okay, well,
Right.
how many people have gone How many skydiving at this very second are skydiving?
Yeah.
And how many of them are
Yeah.
going to die?
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'll talk about that later. So, 6 months later, shortly after 6 months later, that my dad told y'all that.
We
what
were
was
living
the
there.
what was the
Yeah.
you woke up one day and it was like,
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of.
Well,
what
'cause
it
y'all
was
had
like.
no-
I mean,
I think that's what it felt like for other people.
well, because
They-
y'all had no like Zillow or anything like that to be looking up houses. Y'all had to
Right.
just kind of get there, and
right. And
so y'all gotta
and you got to remember. I mean, for me, this was 12 years of planning. For us as a couple, it was 9 years of planning and waiting on the Lord. So I think for a lot of people, it might have seemed like they woke up one day and they made a decision, sold everything, and they were gone in 3 months. But for us, it was really just the culmination of
lot
9
of
years
years, yeah.
of just really pursuing the dream. And and honestly, I think for both of us, but especially for me, of having times where I just felt like, well, this is never going to happen. and then in God's timing, it just kind of all came together. And a lot of those 9 years was Michelle being the
Full.
I was going to say the gas, but the fuel, that really pushed us through. It was my vision, but it really was Michelle's just strength and determination that pushed us through those 9 years and got us where we were going. So,
Because what I know of Michelle, she's pretty daring.
yeah,
Kinda
that's
jump
an
out there.
understatement.
Yeah. Well, I should have said this at the beginning of the podcast, but Mark and Michelle know me better than I know them, I would imagine. I might be wrong on that, but I don't know. I mean, probably known me. I mean, y'all have known my parents before I was even thought of.
We've known your
No, I
parents for
think
20 years. So right about
Yeah,
right
I think
about
it-
the time.
I mean, I just turned 20, so
yeah, so right
probably
about the time you were born.
Just
is kind of when
after.
we
Yeah,
after you were
just
born is when
after.
we met your parents.
Sure. But
Mm-hmm.
but from what I know of them, they're daring, their kids are daring, and sometimes I can see, somebody's got to get pushed, and it's usually Michelle pushing them
Yeah.
to get it
Well,
going.
that's not far from the truth, and Michelle really
welcome.
is. She's always been the one that's been real determined. I mean, we're both determined people. You can't do what God's called us to do.
Yeah, you can't,
without
go live in Turkey.
A
if you're
level
not.
of determination, and you can't stay the course without being a little stubborn and hard-headed. I mean, really, that's what it takes. People make fun of that, and they certainly can be negative attributes. But the bottom line is, doing what we've done for the last 16 years, you're gonna have to have a stubborn streak in you to get
So-
through it.
So y'all are in Turkey. What was the culture shock of it, if any, or y'all were just loving it?
The culture, I think the
hard.
culture shock itself wasn't. I mean, just the surface culture was not a hard thing for us.
I think because for 2 years we had been going back and forth. I mean, we had been 4 times in 2
I've been adjusting
years.
to it.
We the call to prayer and the smells and the sights and the sounds and those kind of things. I think the hardest part was learning to function
Yeah.
in the midst of learning the language so we could appreciate the culture, but learning to function inside the culture.
That was the frustrating.
Well, let me bring up that call to prayer that you mentioned.
Yeah.
You kind of just said the call to prayer. Well, to those of you that did not hear her say that, the call of prayer is like. I mean, I haven't been to Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
I almost went, although I wasn't really gonna. I mean,
You haven't been to Turkey yet.
I was gonna go through Royal Caribbean, so I wasn't really gonna go to
Right.
Turkey, but
Yeah.
but that got canceled.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was gonna go. But even in like Israel, they have the call to prayer.
Right.
And you're just walking through the street, and then all of a
Right.
sudden, if we were off air, I would mock it, but I don't want to offend anybody. But you just start hearing in Arabic
Yeah.
just singing just out
Right.
of nowhere, and it just keeps going and going and going. And you look around, and
Yeah.
everybody's dead silent, and you can like see all of a sudden you notice all the birds are flying, and you're just like, what is going
Right.
on? It hits you when I
Yeah.
was there and they did that. I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And everybody's like
Yeah.
dead silent. I'm like, this
Right.
is just like the movies.
Right.
I told that to my sister.
Well,
I was
and
like,
in Turkey, it's a little different. People aren't dead silent. Actually,
in
life
Turkey,
just
how does it work?
life just goes on. Very very little changes. You hear
Well,
the
in
call to
Israel,
prayer,
they keep moving. But,
Yeah.
well, I mean, in the Muslim quarters, they keep moving, but they're all kind of
yeah, not in Turkey.
don't really.
I
speak
mean,
to
there's
each
probably
other.
parts of Turkey where it's like that, but the bigger cities, Istanbul, places like that, nobody. I mean,
The ones who are going to go to prayer, they're already ready and they go to
They're
prayer.
already at
but
the
not
mosque.
every mosque. Every mosque makes the call to prayer 5 times a day. If it's a functioning mosque, in that it's not in construction, it's built. Even if nobody ever comes, even if it doesn't have an imam, they have a young man who's the caretaker, and 5 times a day he turns on the recording for the call. But life doesn't stop for it. And it is different. The way it comes across in each nation is different. Turkey doesn't speak Arabic. So most Turks don't actually know what the call to prayer is saying. They just know what it is and what it's for based on the time of day and whether or not it's Ramadan. They recognize right away if it's for a funeral or if it's actually the call to prayer. Yeah, when we were living in Istanbul, we could hear distinctly 12 to 15 calls at the same time.
Mosques.
Mosques.
Because of the area that we lived in.
Because of the area that we lived in. And so depending on where you live, that's also a factor. If you're in a small village, you just hear the one mosque in your area. But if you're in a big city, you hear, all
Yeah.
of it. So
But you
I
hear-
actually miss it.
But you hear the public transportation, and you hear the people, and you hear the boats, and I mean, life doesn't stop for the call of prayer in Turkey.
Yeah, you hear the boats. So in Istanbul,
in
there's-
Istanbul
Yeah.
and Izmir.
In Izmir.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, both seaports.
so y'all are getting there. You're having to adjust to this kind of stuff, just like that call of prayer. That's an adjustment. And then your kids are also having to adjust to Turkey. And
Yeah.
were they loving it, or was that kind of hard, or how did that?
I think Clark and Allie, they really loved it from the beginning. It was an adventure. They were little. They were 6 and 4.
Yeah.
It's if you're gonna go on the field with kids, it's an easy age for them to adjust. They're kind of they'll adjust actually faster than the parents will often, because they don't have as much to compare it to.
Because I remember every single time, like Annie, every single time I see her, like, man, I wish I was in Turkey.
Well, she
She
was
was born
born
there.
there.
Sure, it's all she
They-
knows.
this
right?
that's all they know. That's all
Yeah.
she and Karsten
This is a
know.
bigger culture shock for her.
Sure.
Being back
For
here.
both of them.
The year that
Yeah.
we've been back here has been a bigger adjustment than Turkey ever was.
So throughout, kind of fast forwarding a little bit, throughout all this, y'all are settled in Turkey, then you ended up in Izmir. Turkey's kind of a political roller coaster, isn't it? Like 1 minute it's super dangerous, then 1 minute it's like, whatever.
Yeah, we were actually about an hour and a half south of Izmir, and so we weren't in a big city. It is a port city. It's the ancient city of Ephesus. So we didn't always feel a direct impact of the political things that were
Right.
going on, but indirectly we absolutely felt it. Spiritually, you feel it all the way
Yeah.
across the country.
Well, definitely spiritually, but also
Yeah.
with the frequency y'all come back and forth to the United States. You got to go back up to Istanbul, and then it's like, oh,
Yeah.
Well, and you certainly feel it in Istanbul, even in the airport, which a lot of times is the only place that we would be once we moved to Ephesus. So, but we were in a little bit better situation, like Michelle said, being where we were at. It's because it's a port city, and it's very much a tourist hotspot. It was just different. The feel was different, and it was just different.
sure. So I know that now y'all have been here for about a year. What has been the motivation for coming back or not coming back? I don't know. If y'all want to tell us what your
Yeah.
sorry, I accidentally muted myself. What your plans have been? Because what I remembered was there was some personal stuff that going on at y'all's church. That I'll let y'all cover if you want to. Like what happened with your praise and worship leaders. And then I remember, even for y'all to go to Turkey, they would ask you all these questions, and it was like a concern that you'd be sent back, and all that kind of stuff. So what kind of has been? Because we're getting to the peace and chaos thing.
In 2015, there was a coup attempt, according to the government. There was a coup attempt. And after that, they started using that as an excuse to pay really close attention, like get very invasive with foreigners. They had arrested an American pastor and kept him basically without charges
that
for
hit the
2
news, didn't it?
years.
That hit the
yeah,
news
that
pretty
was
hard,
big.
didn't it? I remember that.
President Trump was very instrumental in getting his release in 2018. And right after his release, by January of 2019, we had started seeing a few people getting either kicked out, like not allowed back in the country, or not granted renewal of their visa status. But in January of 2019, it started a wave that over the last 2.5 years, 80 plus people have been deported or kicked out, not allowed re-entry. All Christians, all working with the church in some way. from all different nations. They're not just from one nationality. And so we had felt like at the end of 2019, beginning of 20, we were here in the States, and we really felt the Lord start to talk to us about a strategic plan that included us coming back to the States in, what we felt like he was saying was that this was how we would be able to continue to come and go and still be able to oversee the ministries that we oversee there now, which is we have 3 churches that we oversee and at the refugee ministry that I do. So we really felt like that was the main thrust in it.
Well,
Definitely not on our heart to do.
No, and it
was hard.
It was a very difficult decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord had spoken to us, and He'd actually given us a phrase by design. He said, "What I do is by design, not by default." And we knew that should we continue to stay in Turkey, there was a very good possibility that we would, by default, be kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're kicked out, you're never able to return.
Which you mentioned our worship leader, that had happened to him in 2019. He got kicked out of the country. And so he and
So
his
he
wife
wasn't
ended
he
up
wasn't
leaving.
Turkish. He was
No.
No,
No.
they're Americans.
They're Americans, yeah.
And so so we made that decision we actually made the decision in
Early 2020.
early 2020, March or April of 2020, that we felt like the Lord said, I'm transitioning. The word was that He was expanding our ministry.
Yeah.
It wasn't just going to include Turkey any longer. And He gave us the ministry name of Hope for Nations.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Well, it's not. Yeah, obviously, it's not just going to be Turkey because y'all are already, in the rest of the Middle East and that kind of area. Now, the elephant in the room, the pandemic, March or April. Well, I mean, whatever you want to call it, March or April hit. I don't get into that on the church podcast. I am very broad on the church podcast.
Right.
If you'd like to know my personal opinions, you can just hit me up separately. But March or April hit, and obviously everything shut down and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So once that stuff's kind of started to happen, were y'all like, so are we still going back or?
Well, it was
y'all-
actually during the pandemic that the Lord spoke to us. It's in those moments of quarantine where we were really able to get alone with the Lord and spend some time seeking Him, that He kind of began to confirm some things. And during the pandemic, we were still seeing a lot of people that were being kicked out of the country. So we knew that there was still a lot of stuff going on politically.
Actually, there was an increase of
Yeah.
people kicked out.
Took advantage of the pandemic.
Took
probably, the
advantage,
government,
yeah. Took advantage of people being repatriated, going back to their home countries to kind of ride out the quarantine, and on the way out telling them, oh, by the way,
You're not coming back.
you can't come back. You're banned. So,
So-
which
Yes.
is devastating, because when your whole life is there and you've only packed suitcases to go on vacation, and you can't turn around
And go back.
and get all those sentimental things of your children and the rest of your clothing, and like you've got this apartment or this house full of stuff.
Yeah.
Have y'all been able to help people with that by any chance?
We have actually, we helped a couple of families with that, at least initially, and then a couple of them were able to send adult kids or family members to sort of finish up.
That's funny that they get banned,
The
but
work.
then their family members
Right.
go.
Yeah,
It's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah,
the government's kind of like, well,
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
take that.
Yeah. So, yeah, like Mark was saying, it was during that time when we started talking with our leadership, who were already pastoring the churches, and at that point
We had already
weren't.
transitioned the pastoral oversight of our main church to our Turkish associate pastors.
Right.
So
So what was the final push over here during that time? Because like, were there even flights, and how complicated was that? And then
Actually, during March, April, May, even June, flights were very difficult to
Yeah.
find.
we weren't planning to come back until September. So we
Right.
had made the decision in April that we were coming back, and we figured, it's going to take us probably 5 or 6 months to make that transition and get all of our stuff, taken care of in Turkey. So we were planning to come back in September. but ended up coming back in July because of Allie passing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to talk about that or just kind of?
Sure, yeah, we can. Our daughter Allie had just turned 20
Let-
and
Maybe he can just
was in
ask
an
us.
accident. Well, I already started though.
No. Well, good.
Allie was in an accident, and actually, it was really the Lord that we got plane tickets because they were very difficult.
Yeah.
Still in July, it was very difficult to get out of Turkey. At that point, some countries were allowing travel between countries, but only certain countries, and
And you got to go from like Turkey to Germany.
only on
to-
certain days. And actually, at that point, we could not go through Europe to
Okay.
get back, which was okay because there's a direct flight that we use to Texas, and so yeah, so we ended up coming back
July 6th.
in
and
in
7th.
July for Allie, and she didn't make it. She passed, and we stayed a few months, and then in October we were able to go back and finish up what we needed to do.
Well, part of
So-
the only reason I had y'all mention that is because we're gonna do Peace and Chaos and definitely pandemic and then all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
no,
especially
that's
what they're talking about, if you're not allowed back into Turkey, all your stuff's staying there.
Yeah.
Right.
So with one phone call, you have like 2 hours, if even,
Right.
to gather all of your stuff in a panic.
Yeah.
Probably never gonna come back,
Yeah.
and then get over here somehow.
Well, and even more than the stuff, stuff's replaceable,
Sure.
but
But, like pictures and,
right,
and just,
right.
Well, but the
But-
relationships.
But the relationships and 12 months of building, helping to build the kingdom of God in that area and raising up
12
leaders.
years.
12 years, I'm sorry, of raising up leaders and discipling people. That for most, that's the most devastating thing, to be able
Yeah.
to not
just
come
have
back
like an abrupt
and have access to that.
Well, and then in y'all's case, it's kind of like, okay, well, bye. I don't know what I'm going to. Don't know if I'm
Right.
coming
Right.
back.
See you later, and
Right.
See you later.
May never see you
great 12
again.
years.
Right.
Peace out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And different families have responded different ways. Some have ended up back in their home countries. Others have gone on to another
Talking
country
about
in the
other
region.
missionaries.
Have gone on to a different country in the region. But it doesn't. It's still a trauma. It's still
Sure.
a huge disappointment. It's still a disruption, a huge disruption in family life. And
And then you couple that with the pandemic
Yeah.
and everything else politically that's going on in the world, and it does.
In the
It gets-
world, not just
Right.
Trump, Biden. No,
Right.
that's
No,
just
no.
that's just
That's just a small
That's
part
just
of
the
a
cherry.
very,
That's got
very
nothing to
big-
do
Yeah.
with the rest of it.
right.
Big picture. Of
A lot of
what's
people
going
here
on.
think that you hear politics in the world and it's, oh my God, are y'all really talking about Trump and Biden again? It's like we're
Yeah.
not even close to
No.
that. No.
I mean,
We're talking about
even
everything
just
else.
what's
Yeah.
going on in Israel and Palestine right now. What we're hearing on this side in the U.S. and the West compared to what we know of the political situation in the Middle East and the people that we know in Israel. Completely different perspectives, completely different vantage points.
Exactly.
Right.
And so,
But it's still chaos, and,
But it's
and it
still
feels that
chaos.
way. It feels, we feel like we're in a world right now where everything's falling apart. And it
Sure.
doesn't matter what side of the fence or aisle that you're on.
Yeah.
All of us, from whatever perspective we have, it feels very chaotic right
Well, and especially missionaries. I'm not necessarily talking about y'all, but missionaries in general heavily rely on like donations.
now. Right.
That's just the way it is. And so when the pandemic hits and you're not making any money, you cut everything that's unnecessary, and
Right.
unfortunately, donations is part of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if y'all were in that, but a lot of people that you're out of your country now.
Yeah.
All this stuff's going on. No income's coming in. And you're
yeah,
just like,
just watching organizations that report on those kinds of things. There's been a significant percentage of people who have had to leave their country of service, their country of ministry, because of that. Because either the corona numbers were so high, or the country they're in forced them to go back, or the country they came from forced them to come back. And it's a huge deal because these are people who have given their lives to one thing, and now they're back in a country where people, it's like the blip in the Avengers movie. They disappear for 5 years, and now they come back, and while they've been gone, life has continued, and they're not a part of it, but now they're there.
Well, and this is partly why I get frustrated with some of my friends that, it's like, it's great once they want to donate, but then it's like, why are you donating to the $300 million fundraiser?
Right.
Like I mean, I guess one of them would be St. Jude's or some other ones,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not donate to them,
Right.
but it's also like your money would be of so much better use
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in all of these different places. Like just for example, our school in Nicaragua, it's $300 to sponsor one kid for an entire year.
Right.
So don't give that 300 to like a political campaign or
Right.
If
That's the only 300 you've got to give.
If that's the only 300 you've got
let's-
to give.
Let's
right.
prioritize where that should go.
Right,
And-
because it's going to impact a kid where they literally watch them eat their lunch before they leave because their parents will take the food from them and then eat it
Exactly.
themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Than it will for the $300 million, where the
Exactly.
director of the fundraiser makes like $300 a year.
Right.
Right.
Et cetera.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff
Right.
like that, but we're living in a world right now where everything's just kind of upside down.
So how have y'all? We're now in May. That's wild.
It's almost finished.
We're in May. Yeah, my birthday today. I was like,
Yeah.
is it really though? I like 2 weeks out. It occurred to me. I was like, oh, it's in 2 weeks. I had no clue whatsoever. So that kind of we're in May 2021. How are y'all? You had mentioned before we started recording you wanted to brush on peace and chaos and stuff. How have y'all been
Yeah.
able to? Because y'all, if you want some deep devotional kind of stuff, follow them on their socials. Because and then I see one and I'm like, I need to set aside some time to read this. Then I read it. I'm like, wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, for me, I would say to people, I'm concerned that we are so focused on going back to a normal, like what life was like before the pandemic. And I think that for a lot of people, they're looking to go back because it's been a very chaotic, dark time. It's been a difficult time. It's been a time with lack of income, and it's been a time of unsettledness, and between the election and vaccines and just the political strife in our country, in the U.S., but also just globally. Just watch Facebook. Just watch Facebook. You don't even have to watch the news. Watch Facebook, and you see how many thousands are dying in India where they don't have an infrastructure for health care.
India with COVID, they are just
Right?
Or I hate to use the expression, but they're just dropping one by one.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah. But then other places too. I mean, there's Russia and Ukraine are on the brink of war again.
Or Colombia.
And Colombia, you can look anywhere in the non-westernized world where most of the people live on less than, $5 a day. And first of all, it's going to put your life in perspective. Like, okay, I've still got a roof. I've still got my kids at home. Meanwhile, other people like us have gone through huge tragedies where you're living in huge disappointment and what could be, what is life altering. It's this last year has completely changed people's lives, and there is no going back to that kind of a normal.
Yeah.
It's totally chaos, and you feel like you're in the dark all the time. It's just dark. And I think what the Lord, for me, what I've really learned is that the dark is not a place to be scared. The Bible talks about that he covers us with the shadow of his wing. And so if you're living in a shadow, it's not full of boogeymen. It's full of the presence of God. And where his presence is, there's a peace. And if you lean into that peace, I'm not having big, long daily discussions with God. I'm still wrestling with those questions. I'm still wrestling with how. And I don't like this, and all those things. But the peace of God, the different translations, one says it transcends understanding, and another one says it surpasses understanding. And I've looked at it in several translations, and I went back to the Greek and Aramaic on it, and it's literally a transaction. It's an exchange between me and God. If I want peace, if I want the peace of God to rule and reign, to carry me through this darkness, I literally have to relinquish my right to understand why things are the way they are right now. So whatever that is in our lives, whatever the disappointment is, whether it's the loss of a child, the loss of your home, the loss of your marriage, the loss of your income, whatever the disappointment is, his peace is there.
Yeah.
He's waiting for us. He's waiting for us to pull in under the shadow of his wing. And the shadow is just a reminder that there is light. Because without it, there's no shadow.
Yeah.
And in that place is his peace. And it's all chaotic out there. It's all chaotic. And sometimes he tells it stop. Sometimes he tells the storm, be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes he says, will you get out of the boat and walk with me? Because when Peter got out of the boat, he sunk because the waves were hitting him in the leg, which means it wasn't a calm, crystal sea. It was moving. And sometimes we have to just walk on the water and be at peace with the fact that he's there in the middle of it, and I don't have to understand everything.
Yeah. And actually, Michelle had said something a couple of months ago along those lines, too, that had always stuck with me. She was talking to somebody else, and I just overheard her, and she was talking about mountaintops and valleys. And sometimes we're in a valley, and we feel like we label the valley as this place of just
It's a low
disappointment.
place.
It's low. It's heavy. It's not where we want to be. We want the mountaintop experience. We want to be able to be up there where the air is clearer and we can see farther. But the reality is nothing grows on the mountaintop. The air's too thin, and the weather's too cold. Things grow in the valley. And she had said that, and it was like, wow, what an incredible revelation. If we want growth in our lives, then we have to be willing to live in the valley. The mountaintops are great, and there are those moments where we can catch our breath, but they're just long enough for us to catch our breath so we can go back down into the valley. And the valley's not a bad place. It's where we grow, and it's, and I think when we set our expectations accordingly, then things shift in our lives. James 1, it says, count it all joy, brothers, whenever you fall into various trials and tribulations. It's not a if. It's not, count it all joy if you fall into various trials and tribulations. It's whenever. And we have this expectation, I think, in our lives that everything's going to be a mountaintop experience. That that's the goal in our life. We've got to get to the mountaintop, and then we can plateau and we can live well. But that was never God's intention for us. God intends us to walk through trials, walk through tribulations, because it's in those valleys where we grow. Mm-hmm. It's in those valleys where we become better people. We become more Christ-like in the valley than we ever will on the mountaintop. And so we have to learn how to embrace those times. Expect that they're going to happen. Expect that there's going to be chaos. There's going to be times where we just feel like our world is shattered and falling apart. But it's in those seasons that if we really grab hold of the Holy Spirit, really grab hold of what Jesus Christ wants to do in our lives, that we'll grow and we'll learn how to count it all joy to be in those places of the valley. Mm-hmm. And that's where Michelle and I are at right now, and just trying to walk through all these changes in our lives. The death of our daughter, transitioning from 16 years of ministry in Turkey back into a culture that we don't that we struggle with, because we've been away for so long, and trying to find our place again here. And while God is expanding our ministry and trying to learn what that looks like, dealing with all of the financial things that go with those sort of things, with all of that, but just learning to be okay with it, learning to be in the valley and say, okay, God, you brought us here. Our expectation is that, like your word says, in the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil because you're with me. And your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So I'm going to believe that. I'm going to believe that I'm in the valley. I'm going to believe I'm here for a reason and a purpose, that you're with me and that you're growing me and you're making me into the man or woman that you wanted me to be.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. We all definitely covered that one with a lot of detail.
I think too.
That's a very good answer.
I think too, for us, it's been a matter of. I think in the West, at least in the United States, in the church, obedience looks like it's supposed to be easy. That it's just this decision you make to obey. You know, we always told the kids, if it's not immediate, it's not obedience. But the reality is, the truth is, every act of obedience comes at sacrifice, at the altar of sacrifice. Something has to be laid down in order to continue and to be obedient in the big things. And, you know, I think one of those things right now is that old idea of normal. We're not supposed to go back. God never wants his people going back. You know, that's Israel saying, oh, in Egypt we had garlic and we had leeks and we had fish and we had, you know, a roof over our heads. And they were willing to give up the promise of something better for the comfort of the familiar. And I think that's where God has us. Because, I mean, just laying down the Middle East for now as the place where we live, that was a sacrifice. It was hard. And in the middle of that, losing our daughter was devastating. Yeah. But we know that he's good.
Yeah, see, being obedient.
He's good.
Exactly what you're saying. Yeah, being obedient is like, you know, one of the easiest things you'll do, but because you know what you're doing, you know you're being obedient. But actually doing it is like
But it's the most profitable. It
Right.
yields the highest return is when you obey the first time. You know, not waiting, but being obedient right away yields the highest reward.
Sure. So knowing all of this, especially present day, that's definitely a very good way of keeping peace in chaos. I don't know of a more chaotic scenario that could happen. Of course,
Right.
You know, it'll probably come one day. But with all of this, where do y'all kind of where do y'all see yourself? Year, 2 years. You're starting the new. It was called Hope for the Nations.
Hope for Nations.
Hope for Nations. So that's y'all's primary focus now, and that was definitely. I don't know about y'all, but I mean, I'm gonna re-listen to the podcast and with like a piece of paper and take notes because that y'all definitely gave a lot of detail and insight with that peace and chaos. A lot of people needed to hear that.
Yeah.
So where do y'all see yourselves going in the next? What's the plan for Hope for Nations?
Well, you know, we're not really. A lot of times you say, well, now we've been through this big transition, so we've got to reinvent ourselves, and we're really not trying to reinvent ourselves. We're trying to take what we've been doing for the last 16 years and expand on it. Yeah. We've been very blessed to see 3 strong churches come out of our time in Turkey and in a refugee ministry. We've seen a lot of leaders and you know, men and women that are being discipled and being raised up. And we've had a lot of failures, and we've had a lot of successes. And we've done a lot of things right, and we've done a lot of things wrong. And we want to take that and what we've learned, and we want to apply it on a bigger scale. We want to help local churches in the West to understand what it means to do missions.
How to do this better.
That is very. In the
How to do this better.
Yeah, how to do this better. And
Well, just with the simple thing, where are you sending your donation? You know, just
right, where you're
that.
sending donations, but also, you know, the reality is that in 2010 there was 127,000 missionaries from the United States around the world. In 2015, it dropped to 120,000. Now that's the last time that we had any records, but we've been on a steady decline as the United as as the
Ascending
states as
nation.
a sending nation, where we'd always been on an incline. And so what's happening is the attrition rate is just increasing, and we want to see that change. We want to help churches identify people in their congregation that are called to the missions but just don't know how to get there, and we want to help churches to understand, well, what does it mean to partner with a local ministry overseas? What does it mean to partner with missionaries? And
national leaders.
And what does it mean to build a missions program within our church? So we want to, you know, that's one of the goals is
That's gonna be
to
awesome.
take what we've learned and to help churches do this better. The other thing we want to do is to fill that gap. We want to raise up missionaries. We want to see people, identify people that are called to go into the foreign field and help them get there. We equip them with the tools that they need and empower them to go. And so, but we also, we're seeing more missionaries leave the field every year than are going. So we're kind of in a negative attrition. We're in a serious attrition rate all over the world, not just in the United States. And we're losing so many missionaries because they left. They didn't have a good plan, good vision. They didn't have the right support, or they get over on the field and they have personal
conflict.
conflicts with other missionaries.
It's not even finances.
Yeah,
It's relational.
relationships, and they're leaving the field and traumatic with trauma in their lives, and so we want to help these people. You know, we want to turn the tide on that and find a safe place where they can come, they can receive counsel, they can receive training, and then we can get them back out on the field, rest where they need it, and get them back out on the field because we're losing so many.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we want to do is continue just to engage and equip local leaders and pastors all over the world, in the nations, but specifically in the Middle East, Central Asia. So help raise them up.
Yeah. And just for the sake of integrity, because I'm always very specific. We planted one church. The second church was in process and just needed structure and oversight, and so we came alongside that one. The third one was already a church that God just, I'm kind of getting over and a little tired of organic, but God organically started it. It's run by a couple who are refugees themselves, and they are reaching refugee people groups that speak their language, their native language. And they came to us and through a friend and have asked us to help them, to work with them and oversee them. So that's the third church. Yeah. One of the things that we want to do that I'm always very quick to bring up is change the word missionary. First of all, it's totally not biblical. I defy anybody to find the word actually in Scripture. It's not there. And it creates this immediate mental image of who those people are. And we all have the same mandate.
Right.
Whether you're serving occupationally as a pastor or you're a
CEO.
volunteer children's church worker or the CEO of a company or a barista at Starbucks.
The mandate's the same.
The mandate's the same. It doesn't depend on your education or your age or your ethnicity or your skin tone, or it just doesn't. Jesus said, go make disciples. So we are goers.
We happen to
goers
to the nations, but other people are called to go to their neighborhood or go to their business or go to their church.
Their sphere of influence.
Their sphere of influence. But we're all goers. We're all people that have been called to go and to preach the gospel, that the kingdom of heaven is near, to heal the sick, to cast out demons, to
It's
cleanse the lepers, raise the dead.
It is easier than ever before in history, Ethan, to disciple nations from our own front door.
Yeah.
Every people group, every nationality of the world is represented inside the boundaries of the United States, the borders of the United States. It's as easy as getting online and doing a demographic search for your city and finding where they live and becoming friends. Just be their friend.
Or joining a ministry
Joining
that's
a
already
ministry
involved
that's already
in reaching
involved
those people that need
in
help.
reaching those people.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we want to sort of demystify what it means to make disciples of nations and to be obedient
Yeah.
to that commandment.
Well, very good. Well, thank you all for doing the podcast. To those of you watching, go.
Go.
That's right.
Definitely go.
If you don't know how, just call us.
Yeah, just call Mark and Michelle. Just in the chat. Just I need their phone number. We'll send it to you privately. But definitely inspiring podcast today. Thank you all so much for doing the interview. I'm definitely, I'm 20. I'm thinking about my future, and stuff like this is always definitely reassuring to anybody out there that is thinking about what
Yeah.
they're going to do tomorrow. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, thank you all so much, and
Thanks.
everybody
It's been our
watching.
pleasure.
Y'all have a good week.